All right, so we have entered our parameter in the model, but we have not yet actually entered it into this part of the model, which is where it will change our outcomes. So right now, our alternative transmission rate we have set to 0. Our base transmission rate is 1.1. So we want to tell Excel if it's between days 15 and 19, we want you to have this base transmission rate, this alternative transmission rate rather. If it's between days 0 and 14, between these days, we want this rate, and if it's after day 19, we also want this rate. But if it's between 15 and 19, we want that rate. So we need to find where in Excel this is entering into the model, and it's in this number infected. You can see if you double left click anything in Excel, it will show you. If you double left click a cell, it will show you what cells it's referencing. So here you can see this B6 is being referenced here, so that's where we want to change it if it's between our day 15 and 19 to be this. So we can do that by, I'm just going to cut this out, and I'm going to, just because it's going to be cleaner, I'm going to enter some statements here. So I'm going to do an if and. So an if statement is just a simple logical statement. When you put an and, it's telling Excel that you want two logical statements there. So if the day is less than, no, I'm sorry, greater than or equal to our date of intervention, day 15, and so I enter a comma that gives us, you see it's moved on to second logical, so this is a second logical we're entering, and if that day is less than or equal to day 19, we can close that. Then I'm going to tell Excel what we want it to be. So if it's between those days, we want it to be. I don't know if you can hear my son screaming in the background. I'm just for now going to put a 1 to test it, and if it's not between those days, is 0, and then close parenthesis, and that should be okay. Now, if you want to have that change ripple through your whole column, you can quickly do that by double clicking. You can click and drag this like that, and that will do it. But you can also double click this, and when I do, you're going to see that there's going to be a problem. Everything is gone to 0. So we've made a mistake, and I know what we did, so fear not. So in Excel, you have the ability to make these sort of cell references either absolute or absolute reference or a relative reference. So for H6, for the days, we want that to be a relative reference. So as I drag this down, I want that to be, and you'll see here, this is going to be H7. That's good. We want that to be that because it's a new day. But for these values, we want those to be an absolute reference. We don't want those to be varying. If you see here, when I click that, it's now going down a block, and click down here, you're going to see it's off of our numbers. So that's a problem. Double click that again, and you can make an absolute reference by putting in a $sign. So I put in a $sign there. That tells Excel that I always want it to be column B, and I also always want it to be the 22nd row. And again, I want it to be always column B, and I always want this to be the 24th row. Now when I do it, it should give us what we want. Yeah, so between the 15th and the 19th, I told Excel I wanted a 1 there, if that's what it was, and it has worked as it should, the logical statement. But we don't want a 1 or 0. We want to actually put in our modified base transmission rate, or modified rate. So I'm going to paste back in the original formula. And so for this was B6. This was the 1.1 over here. I don't want that to be that. I want this to be B21. So you can either type in B21. I'll just do that, and you can see that the box is shifted. You can also click and drag it, so I can drag this anywhere if I want to do it that way. But I'll just I'll drag it back. All right. So if it is that between those days, I want it to be our alternate rate. If it's not between those days, I want it to be our original rate, and I can do this by simply pasting back in. You can also like this and copy, and you could have pasted it and change that back to B6. So if I hit this, it should work. And these are my old code that had the problem. So if I double click this again, see I can click and drag. That does that. And if I double click it, it works as one might expect perhaps. So you can see between these days, the transmission rate goes down to 0. You have no new infections because we have absolutely aggressive social distancing. So you have no new infections, but you still have an infected population. So that's still rippling through the model. And you can see this rise here. And then our intervention kicks in. And then it ramps up. All right, let's stop this video here. And I will then move on to talk about some more complex issues with the model.